Hi everyone, it's Rax. The expansion is releasing a brand new class, the Spiritborn. The Spiritborn is one of the most polished classes that Blizzard has ever released. And there's so many things to theory craft about it that you might have heard people talking about that I thought it might be good just to make a high level overview, kind of a Spiritborn 101 with Professor Rax, where I kind of just walk you through the basics of the class. That way, if you want to theory craft your own build, you might discover the next super meta torment for clearing monstrosity. So let's start from the basics and let's start with these spirits. So the Spiritborn is based upon 4 spirits. First of all, we have the Gorilla. The Gorilla does physical damage, and it's tied to the defensive layer of Barrier, and it does a lot of things with Thorns. Now, Thorns with the Spiritborn is not just a monster hits you and ow, it does damage back to them. There's tons of ways to implement Thorns and to actually shoot your Thorns outward. So if there's ever going to be a good Thorns build, it will probably be with the Spiritborn, with the Gorilla. Next, we have the Eagle. The Eagle is all about agility. It's all about moving around the battlefield. Another thing I would say about the Eagle is maybe the most visually appealing. It's got like light blue feathers and little sickles shooting around everywhere, little quills, and it just looks amazing. So implementing Eagle into your build is going to increase the speed, the momentum, if you like to go real fast. Next we have, and by the way, the Gorilla is physical, the Eagle is lightning. Now we have the Hunter. The Hunter is the Jaguar, and some people call it Jaguar. I mean, whatever you call it, the Jaguar. And this is a fire-based Hunter, and the Jaguar is all about attack speed. It's all about fire. It's about like that. It's kind of like in the Diablo 3 Fire Monk. It's kind of bringing back that fantasy of just really kung fu and just tear your enemies to pieces. And then finally, we have the Devourer, which is the Centipede, which is poison damage. It's all about manipulating the monsters, just draining their health and healing you back up and slowing them. The Centipede is the ultimate poisoning build if you really want to mess with your enemies. So let's take a look at some of the itemization of Spiritborn. Everything is pretty normal except for the weapons. So we have 3 choices. We can use a glaive, a quarterstaff, or a polearm. Now, those 3 are different in 2 ways. First of all is the implicit, which is the stat that always comes on these weapons. A glaive will always have damage to elites. That's additive damage. Then you have the Warcrest, the polearm, will always have vulnerable damage. That is also additive damage. And then finally, you have the quarterstaff, which is going to be block chance. And you might be thinking, wow, block chance sounds really stupid. Why would I take that? Well, again, everything about the Spiritborn is not always as it seems. Some stats that might seem really dumb can not only save your life, but can also, via all the theory crafting that you can do, be transformed into something completely different, which can be crazy overpowered. That's why the Spiritborn's real power doesn't come through until you get all of the synergies, which is why a Spiritborn will probably feel way better in the endgame than it does while leveling. The other difference between these weapons is the attacks per second. So if you get 1.1 attacks per second, this is going to be your fastest option, which is the quarterstaff for the Spiritborn. The middle one is going to be the glaive at 1 attack per second, and then finally the slowest one is going to be the polearm. So if you're building everything up, if you're ramping up to do one gigantic mega attack, maybe the polearm is the option. If you need to get as many attacks out as possible to do the most damage, maybe it's the quarterstaff, but you also have to consider the implicit. So this is one of the main things that you're really going to have to decide when you're theory crafting, which weapon are you going to use, because it will matter. Now let's talk about the class mechanic. So you get 2 buffs from the spirits. You can pick Jaguar, Eagle, Gorilla, or Centipede for your first slot, and then again at 15, and then at 30 you get another one. The first thing to understand is you can use any combination that you want. You can make a full Centipede build and then pick Eagle Centipede, or you can make a full Jaguar build and then go Gorilla Eagle, or you could go Triple Eagle. You can do whatever you want, no matter what. Now, the general idea is you want to try to get as many benefits as you possibly can out of your build. You want to scale it as much as you possibly can. So let's just read at what some of these powers do. But the main thing to understand between these two slots, because they're not the same, is if you read at the bottom, whichever spirit you pick from the very first choice is going to make all of your skills also those skills with the tag. What the hell does that mean? Okay. So if we go into the tree, for example, and we look at this, Withering Fist. The first couple of choices in the tree are your generator, right? They're just the basic attacks that you do. Withering Fist is the Centipede one. It does poison. This is the Jaguar one, the Eagle one, and the Gorilla one. If I'm speccing Withering Fist, and then here I pick the Jaguar, where at the bottom it says all of my skills are also Jaguar skills, this is now a Centipede and a Jaguar skill. That will help you, because later on you're going to see there's some passives, there's some powers that may only apply to Jaguar skills. So if you're making a poison build and it's all Centipede, and you find like the greatest unique ever, and it does this godly thing that would help you, but it only works if your skills are Jaguar skills, well, you just set this to Jaguar. There you go. Now, this other thing is more of I would call it a more minor benefit. It doesn't do anything crazy like that, but it will help you with certain aspects related to the different spirits. So let's take a look at these. So the first one for the Jaguar, the 4th time you deal direct damage, you unleash slashes, doing 100% of the damage of your last 4 hits, and everything is a Jaguar skill, just essentially adding a ton of extra damage. Eagle. If you cast an Eagle skill, you get 2 Storm Feathers, and you build them up. When you evade, which the Spiritborn is very mobile, you'll be evading all the time. You're going to throw 8 of these Storm Feathers. It does pretty good damage, and it makes them vulnerable. And vulnerable is a shitload of damage as well. So evading around your enemy is going to shoot these AoE feathers. It's going to make them vulnerable, and now everything is an Eagle skill. For the Gorilla, we got Thorns, and the second part of it is crazy. It grants you a barrier of 5% of your life up to 30%. The Gorilla power, you're going to see it, I believe, in all 3 of my leveling builds. It just keeps you alive. It's so good. Getting 5% on your maximum life for casting a Gorilla skill, and it makes everything a Gorilla skill, it's very hard to kill you when you have essentially infinite barriers. Super powerful. Then finally, the Centipede, it reduces their damage and it slows them. So again, Centipede is always manipulating everything, and of course it makes everything a Centipede skill. Here, we increase our Ferocity by 1, and you gain a stack of Ferocity whenever you kill an enemy or damage a boss. Which brings me to my next favorite point of the Spiritborn 101 lecture. Do you know what Ferocity is? Some keywords here. Do you know what Resolve is? And do you know what Vigor is? If you know what these things are, before you go in, you're going to have an advantage. Ferocity, I believe, is 5% attack speed, can stack 4 times, and it lasts for 4 seconds. That's what Ferocity is. Resolve is 20% DR damage reduction as long as you have it up. Every time you get hit, you lose a stack of Resolve. I believe it has to be direct damage, by the way. Someone has to punch you in the face, not like poison ticking on you. And it stacks up to 8 times. And Vigor is your resource. That's what you're building up. So, you can't remember all that. Simplify it. Ferocity, attack speed. Resolve, damage reduction. Vigor, that's your resource. Okay, so we go back here. +1 to stacks of Ferocity. That's more attack speed. You gain attack of Ferocity whenever you kill an enemy. It's going to be all the time. Or when you damage a boss. So you essentially just keep your Ferocity forever if you go Jaguar. Okay? That's what we have. The Eagle. For every 4 meters you move, your crit chance goes up. The bonus is reset 2 seconds after you critically strike. Eagle's all about mobility to get something out of it. Gorilla. Resolve goes up by 2. That's the DR stacks. Whenever you have 5 stacks of Resolve, you are unstoppable. That means if we could maintain our Resolve above 5, nothing can crowd control us. That's very tempting. Centipede. Heal 1% of your maximum life for every nearby enemy that you've poisoned, up to 5%. So you can just keep getting a 5% heal all the time. So if you could get your DR high enough where the monsters can't one-shot you, the Centipede, in theory, could keep you alive through anything, as long as you keep fighting. You can already start to imagine all of the crazy possibilities that are available here. Let's take a high-level look at the skill tree. I don't want this video to be 10 hours long, although some of you might be willing to go to a 10-hour Rax lecture, but let's not do that. So these are the basic skills, 1 for each class. These are the main core skills, 1 for each class, and they do pretty much what you would think they would do. The Gorilla does a big, devastating, crushy shockwave. The Quill Volley throws the feathers. The Rake does this swipey, big damage thing, and the Stinger starts poisoning everything. Exactly what you think it would do. Then we come down here and we have the mobility skill. We have Soar, we have Vortex, which can grab everything together. We have the Toxic Skin, where we're going to poison people, and it actually has a passive just for having it. Passive, anytime they attack you, they're going to be poisoned, and down here it's going to have something to deal with thorns. So you can see Blizzard with their itemization and with their skill tree and with their passives. Why is there thorns on the poison centipede thing? It's because they're trying to give you ways to mix and match the thorns from the gorilla with the poisoning stuff. This is why when you start to look at the Spiritborn and you start to look at when we add the next layers, the Paragons and the Legendaries and the uniques, everything is not always as it seems. That's why it's going to be very interesting to see who comes up with the most like meta godly builds, because someone's going to out there is going to have some crazy combinations that they go with that is just going to be absolutely beautiful. That's one thing that I really like about this class. We come down here and we've got some defensive options. We got Armored Hide to gain Resolve. We've got Concussive Stomp. We got Counterattack, a way to give the enemies a taste of their own medicine. And we have Scourge if we want to dial in more to the poisoning stuff. Now, when we come down here, we have the potency attacks. So kind of similar to the other classes. Again, 1 for each class. Again, dialing into more of the same things that we've seen before. But the interesting thing about this part of the tree is this is where this thing starts to really matter. Remember the part of the class mechanic that we picked where it gives you all another whole layer of skills? Well, these passives that go down either the Gorilla, the Eagle, the Jaguar, or the Centipede tree are all very strong. So by you picking one of these, you could potentially unlock another path here. For example, let's say you want to be a Centipede boy, right? You want to poison everything. Well, let's read this. Centipede skills deal multiplicative damage and double it versus healthy enemies. Any passive that gives you multiplicative damage for what you're doing, you're going to take it always. No questions asked. Okay, what about the next one? Your Centipede skills deal 4% multiplicative increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies and 30% increased crowd control durations, which should be more stagger on the bosses. So we're taking those and we're maxing them 100% if we're playing Centipede, pretty much without exception, right? But if we pick one of the other, things here, like Jaguar, for example, now we got to look over here. Hitting enemies with Jaguar skills increases the damage they take from you by 10%. Okay, I need that. That's multiplicative damage. We go over here. Jaguar skills do 1% multiplicative critical strike damage per your stack of Ferocity. Okay, so if I'm taking Jaguar here, I better find some way to build my Ferocity somewhere in my poison build, and I better take this. because it's very, very strong. So the point here, if we mouse over all these passives are very, very powerful, and they synergize if you can find a way to get these tags into your skills that you're dealing damage with. That's why this choice actually really matters. Then we have the ultimates. Big gorilla, smash you boy, eagle, fly you boy, makes them vulnerable. We got the hunter that can be potentially resummoned, I believe. If you killing an enemy with the hunter is present as a 40% chance to instantly reset its cooldown. So sometimes you can throw like 3 hunters in a row. It's hilarious. Then, of course, we got Centipede Boy, who devours everything. It's a good name for it, the Devourer. The interesting thing about taking one of these ultimates is it's usually a good idea to take one of the ultimates with your Spiritborn build, because it gives you this entire tree, which is based around the ultimates. Ultimates grant you multiplicative damage to elites for 3 seconds. It increases your maximum vigor. Remember our keywords, vigor is our resource that we're generating. Slaying enemies with an ultimate skill active gives you supremacy, gives you more damage, will do anything for damage. Casting an ultimate skill makes you unstoppable. We might be able to stack enough cooldown reduction and get enough powers to make some of our ultimates almost always up. It's another way to almost get permanent unstoppable. And then down here, upon casting an ultimate skill, the last potency, defensive, or focus skill you cast prior to it is reset and be cast free up to multiple times per 5 seconds if you spec into it. Okay, so wait a minute. So what this says is the skill that I cast before the ultimate. So let's say, I don't know, Touch of Death. This one. If we really pump this into Oblivion and we cast it, it has a 15-second cooldown. All right, fine. But it says after my ultimate skill, the last skill that I cast can be cast up to 3 times for free. So I could spam this. So a skill that was potentially on cooldown that's devastating, that I can only cast once every 15 seconds, I can cast 3 of them in a row as long as I activate it right before, I guess it would technically be 4 in a row. 1, and then the ultimate, and then 3 more in a row. So now you're starting to see some combinations here where maybe you evade and drink a potion to activate some buffs, and then you punch him and make him vulnerable, and then you activate this, and then you activate your ultimate, and then you get 3 more of these. You actually have some kind of a rotation on like a really tough boss. Whereas if you did your normal rotation, you would do way less damage. So there's all these little, I'm trying to get the gears turning here. I want you to see some of the potential here. The gears have got to be turning here, because there's going to be some combinations here that are very crazy strong if you do it right, which is going to be kind of the exciting part. They've got some interesting key passives as well. Noxious Resonance. Your critical strikes cause enemies to burst, doing 100% of their total poisoning damage as direct poisoning damage to themselves. This is very much up my alley, man. I want to poison them. I want to gather them. I want to poison them. I want to cripple them. And then I want there to be poison explosions. And then I want my centipede to kill everything. This is very much up my alley. This is definitely what I'm going to try to make work, is a poisoning build. Prodigy's Tempo. Every 3rd consecutive cast of the same basic skill gives you all plus skill ranks by 2. Okay, that's like multiplicative damage. Every 3rd consecutive cast of the same core or potency skill reduces all cooldowns by 10%, increased by 2% for all of their skill ranks. So once again, based upon how you play, and honestly, probably how fast your attack speed is, that's why it's probably called tempo in the name, you can raise the level of all of your skills, and you can bring back all of your cooldowns. Could be crazy strong in some situations. Adaptive stances. The base spirit of a skill. Base spirit means the spirit that it comes with naturally, not the secondary spirit that you added to it. So this would be a centipede skill. The base spirit of a skill, cast, grants movement speed, damage reduction, attack speed, or lifesteal. If you cast a different base spirit, you get the new bonus, and it increases your core stats by 50%. So your core stats, a lot of times that stacking core stats is the best way to do a shitload of damage. So as long as you're swapping, you're getting all these new bonuses and you're getting that big multiplicative bonus. Vital Strikes. You deal 45% multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. Making an enemy vulnerable heals you, gives you 5 Vigor. Remember, Vigor is your resource. And it removes the vulnerable effect. Okay. So if you're really, really good at just chain applying vulnerable, you can keep removing the vulnerable to do massive damage and heal you and generate a shitload of your resources. I mean, it's pretty interesting. It's a lot better than a lot of the stupid crap that we've been seeing in the past, like 10% attack speed or potion healing or impairment reduction. Fine, like when people say, a lot of people are saying like the Spiritborn feels better, it has a higher level of polish. There's actually some mechanics here. There's actually something to theory craft. There's actually something to test with and play around with. You know what I mean? This is why people are having this feeling. I have a feeling this video is getting too long, so let's wrap this up here really quickly. So one more thing to go into the Paragon and the theory crafting. Some of these legendary nodes are pretty crazy. When you dodge or block an attack, you get increased attack speed, or you get increased attack speed and increased damage. Okay, that's pretty good. When you use the cooldown, you get more thorns. There might be a crazy thorns build. 1% damage for every 3% of your maximum life you have as a barrier. Remember, this gorilla power gives you a shitload of barrier, right? 5% of your maximum life cast for casting a gorilla skill. Very strong. Where were we? Heal for 100% of your maximum life, deals a certain amount of damage to close enemies. We'll see what the actual value is later. 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies. You'll do 30% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. After moving 10 meters, you deal 3% increased damage. Stacks up to 10 times. Could be very strong for those eagle builds that move around all the time. You deal bonus damage equal to 20% of your 2 highest bonuses. The damage types combined up to 30%. Probably going to be very strong. When you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills with the same spirit in a row, you get 15% Vigor and 30% increased damage. Okay, so a lot of these are very strong. You're going to get to pick, I believe, 5 of them, limited to 5 boards, or maybe it's 4 of them because you have the starter board. I can never remember which one it is. Either way, you're going to have to pick your 4 or 5 favorite ones and make your build around that. The final thing I want to show you, the last layer that goes into the theory crafting here, is of course the legendary powers and the uniques. So let's take a skill like, let's say you want to make a Thorns build, right? So if you want to make a Thorns build, you might look at Rock Splitter, for example. It gives you Thorn stuff. We looked here at Toxic Skin. This does a Thorns thing. Okay, now we go to Payback. Slashes enemies in front of you, and when attacked, you have a 35% to reduce Payback's cooldown. Okay, each time an enemy attacks you, the damage they take from Payback is increased. Okay, and it passively grants you Vigor when you take damage, or being crowd controlled while Payback is on cooldown is free to cast and grants you Unstoppable. Okay, notice something here. Even though we're doing like Thorn stuff with Gorilla, there's nothing really inherently about Thorns with Payback. So if you're theory crafting your Gorilla build, you might think, well, I'm not going to spec into Payback because I'm not going to cast it because it doesn't do Thorns. But this is where the next layer comes in. Oh, what about this power? Payback now echoes forward and deals 210% of your Thorns damage to enemies. Payback just went from like a 0 on the Thorn scale to like a 100. Now all of a sudden I want to make my build completely around Payback. Then we have this. When you cast the 3rd attack of your basic skill, you have a 30% chance to just unleash a Payback. So maybe not only is Payback my Thorn skill now, maybe I don't even put Payback on my bar. Maybe I spec into it and I don't even put it on my bar and I spam my basic skills to just unleash the Paybacks. You see how quickly that changed? It went from never going to spec Payback to I'm going to spec Payback and use it to maybe I'm going to spec payback and I'm not going to use it, and it's still going to do all of my damage. Probably the most famous build guide that I ever made in Last Epoch was the Detonating Arrow Marksman build. Maybe some people that are watching this video right now made that build in Last Epoch. That build absolutely shit on everything. It was like super godly. But it was like you were a ranger, but you didn't use the bow, and you used daggers to throw bombs, but you didn't throw any bombs. Instead, you just laid traps. But we were actually throwing detonating arrow bombs, but we didn't shoot an arrow, and we didn't throw an arrow. We didn't do anything with arrows. We just laid mines. It's kind of like that. It's like everything is not as it seems, and that's really cool, and that makes pretty much some of the coolest builds. All right, well, let's look at this unique. Your skills are all additionally Jaguar, Eagle, Gorilla, or Centipede skills based on your secondary Spirit Hall choice. Oh, so if I go full Centipede and then I pick Gorilla here, and everything is now also, it's Centipede by default, and now it's also Gorilla, now it'll also give it Jaguar. Remember how that's important, because now I can go here and get these super juicy passives, among other things. Okay, so this unique might actually change your skill tree. Each spirit type a skill has increases its damage by 50%? What the fuck is this? That's so godly. Don't worry, they already nerfed it. I think they already nerfed it to 30%. But that means that if we put 3 on one skill, that's already 90% multiplicative damage for one item. That's godly. By the way, don't forget that this helmet also has DR on it, damage reduction, which is crazy. Very rare stat to get. So we're going to be masterworking that up, and we're going to be good to go. I want to show you that the Spiritborn class seems really cool, and I want to show you that spending time theory crafting this stuff should be very rewarding. So I hope you enjoyed the Spiritborn 101 lecture. Test on Friday. I guess this is actually coming out on Friday. Test next Friday. And stop picking your nose, Jimmy, at the back. I saw that. No, it's all right. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. I have a million more videos coming, and I would be interested to hear your feedback. Do you like videos like this where we just talk about the class? Again, not trying to give any spoilers here. I'm not showing you any solutions to anything, because honestly, I don't have them. But I want to show you the basics, so maybe you can get on the Maxroll planner and, I don't know, make something godly. Thank you.